Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there. I hope wherever you are in the world listening to this that you're well and that you're safe and you're in good health and you're looking forward to what's to come in 23. In today's episode and over the next, certainly the next one, we'll see after that, we're going to talk about, or I'm going to explore some aspects of probably one of my favorite subjects, which is the entrepreneurial mind. And I could talk for hours about this because I guess it's at the center of my work, has been for maybe over 20 years. So, but I'm going to throw out a couple of points today in the next episode about how to leverage what I honestly believe is innate in everybody, the entrepreneurial mind. How do you leverage it? Now, before I get into that, I just want to say that I'm very excited about my True Success Planner that seems to have kind of almost gone viral this year. I've been giving it out as a gift for 13 years. And it's evolved with each year into a very, like at the moment, it's a pretty, impressive workbook. It's been designed, a lot of time and effort's gone into it. I'm sharing questions that I use to help keep me on track. And look, it's available there for the rest of this month in January. And the link is in the show notes if you haven't downloaded it yet, or if you want to share it with people. And that's the bit that really I'm delighted with. It seems to be being shared with friends and colleagues. And so look, I think that for me, true success is something that's all too rare. Most people, I think, in my experience, have a very narrow definition of success. And because of that, it's one of the reasons why, for most people, success can be meaningless and a lack of fulfillment, lack of purpose. True success is where it's at. And that takes work, but that workbook could be a good start. Or if you're already on that journey, it might even help even more. So it's there in the show notes if you're interested. Going back on point with the subject today, leveraging the entrepreneurial mind, I suppose somebody asked me a couple of years ago, like, what was the common denominator with the people that I work with? Because most of my clients, like, it's a split generally between business owners, entrepreneurs, and senior executives, perhaps in maybe corporate environments. And I was thinking about what's like the corporate people, like, what is it? Because I don't always get on or work as well with some corporate people. Or even some business owners. What's the common denominator? And the common denominator is that they all have a very entrepreneurial-minded approach. They're kind of seen as mavericks. They're willing to take on the status quo. That's generally a giveaway. They won't settle for what exists. They look always to improve themselves and the people around them, the situation they're in. They love a challenge. They will take risk. And I suppose so. I'm making a distinction here between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial-minded person. Although obviously, in the corporate world, you can call those people intrapreneurs, which to me means they have an entrepreneurial-minded approach. Now, no two entrepreneurial or entrepreneurs are the same. They're a bit like ice cream. Like, you can have ice cream is kind of ice cream, but there's different flavors. And in this case, entrepreneurs are the same, and even entrepreneurial-minded people are the same. So there's certain habits that I'm going to get into this now that science has shown that over the last 25, 30 years, that entrepreneurial-minded people do think differently to the average person. What I find fascinating is that once you understand what those habits are, those habits of thinking, you can learn them, you can teach them, people can definitely take them on, and then by default, change and improve their approach. Now, so it doesn't, you can learn from an entrepreneurial-minded person, even if you're in sport, if you're a parent, if you're in any field, really. The bottom line is you can learn how to have a more entrepreneurial mind. And that is a big deal. This is the kind of thing that really should be taught in schools, let alone business, let alone life. So let's start at a basic level. Like, what's an entrepreneur? Okay, if you go to the dictionary, you'll find something like this that I'm looking at it here. It says the word entrepreneur originates from a 13th century French verb, entreprendre, excuse my French pronunciation, meaning to do something or to undertake. So in that context, it's quite broad. But by the 16th century, the term entrepreneur has been used to refer to somebody who undertakes a business venture. And if you go to a dictionary now, modern dictionary, it'll say something along the lines of an entrepreneur is a person who sets up a business or businesses taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. So for most people, it's to do business. But if you go back to the root word, which I prefer, it's about to do something or to undertake, to shake things up. And that's the word that I think that's the definition that I prefer. So if we see an entrepreneur in action, it can be a bit like gravity, I think. You kind of know kind of what it does or kind of maybe what it looks like, but it's very hard to explain it sometimes. So my job, I guess, over the years and my passion really has kind of brought me in contact into looking at, well, what is an entrepreneurial mind? What are the habits that make up somebody who can think differently, like the great Apple advertising campaign said, which was obviously inspired by great entrepreneurial minded person, Steve Jobs. But my experience is that we all have it. We all have this ability inside us, an entrepreneurial mind ability, but it's not always activated. And I think sometimes our conditioning, what we believe about ourselves, our thinking, maybe what other people have said to us, or our life experience, it can block it. It can knock it out of us. And some people, you might say, will have it naturally. Fair enough. But even those natural people they can't always explain to you what is it about their thinking or what is it about them that allows them to do what they do. And as a result, they have blind spots. I mean, I know many entrepreneurs people would say, oh yeah, they're great because they're very wealthy, but they can be very egotistical. They can be ignorant. They can also be decent. They can also have major blind spots on their health, their relationships. So just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean really anything. Again, it comes back to, I guess, what I said at the start about what's your definition of success. But here's the thing, without doubt, we need to learn how to be more entrepreneurial minded with the coming decades ahead of us, because we're in the time now of unprecedented volatility and uncertainty. And actually having an entrepreneurial mind, learning those habits of entrepreneurialism in your mind are going to be essential to adapting and creating and shaping the future. Now you think, well, how does it show up? Generally, somebody who's this way inclined will see like they're good with ideas, maybe they get insights, they definitely will take risks, although they mightn't see it necessarily as risks, but they're probably good at managing risks. They're solution-minded more than problem-minded. They will often think big. That's what they prefer. They might have visions. They'll look to shape their future as it emerges. They're possibly creative, improvisational. And as I say, they're a bit like ice cream. They're all this, like at the core, they're the same, but lots of different flavors. Now, I've seen over the years myself that I have never met really any entrepreneur that's the same as another, a bit like ice cream maybe. But good entrepreneurs definitely think different to the average person. But if you're dealing with a great entrepreneur, they think different again, and they have different aspects, I think, to their thinking. Now, when I say thinking, it's not just about thinking big or thinking positive, even though that will come into it, but it's more to do with where their thinking is coming from. Like what's behind the thinking? What's their belief? And we're in an age where books on entrepreneurs or by entrepreneurs, are on the bestseller list often. I don't know, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, these are influential people. We're in an entrepreneurial age. People are fascinated, and which is good, because I think it's good to read those books in many ways. We learn, about what people do, how things have worked for them, their backgrounds. We think, oh, well, if it works for them, maybe I can do it too, which is always good. But they don't seem to, those books, get into, well, why do they do what they do? Or what way are they thinking? And you see, very often they can't tell you because it's unconscious. And so even when I'm dealing with entrepreneurs or CEOs, entrepreneurial-minded, successful people, they very often don't realize, and 99% of the time they don't realize until they talk to me, the importance of the thinking and the way that they're thinking. Sorry, the importance of their thinking and the way that their thinking affects everything. Because the bottom line is, your thinking affects your results. It absolutely affects your results. Now, sticking with the entrepreneurial theme, there's a program, I'm recording this, I'm obviously Irish, I live in Ireland. I've got clients international, but my base is in Wicklow, Ireland. And there's a program available in Ireland, which is absolutely brilliant, called the Junior Entrepreneur, created by a very successful entrepreneur himself called Jerry Kennelly, who's based down in Kerry in the south of Ireland. And this program can be taken into different schools at different times. If you're in Ireland, I'd recommend you check it out. Even if you're not, maybe you should check it out too. Connect about your country with them. It's it's a brilliant program. Anyway, I brought it into a school in Wicklow where my kids are, and we ran it for my daughter's, it was 5th class. So we're going back a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe when she was 10, I think. But what you saw in that time was, yes, the different kids, they adapted different elements of, they had to come up with an idea, put it through the mill, look at the marketing, the finances, launch it, bring it to market, sell it. So it was a great project. And well, in doing that, you just see that if kids are given a chance, it is innate. Now, some adapted perhaps quicker than others, but they all enjoyed it. They all learned from it. And to me, that is this entrepreneurial spirit, perhaps inside. Now, most, as I said, entrepreneurs can't tell you the way that they're thinking or why it's so different, because they just are the way they are as far as they're concerned. But one of the habits that I want to focus on just for a little bit is they will all allow themselves to think big. They'll all allow themselves to dream the impossible, and then to kind of go for it, to start taking steps. For most people, they might think big or dream the impossible, but then they won't take any action. They listen to that part of their voice, their mind, that says, yeah, but how? Or no, that's not going to happen for you. And an entrepreneurial minded person is somebody who kind of not necessarily doesn't have negative thoughts, but they just don't listen to it as much. And I think that's one of the key habits. They'll just take action despite that inner voice. There's a little bit of research by a guy called Dr. Harry Alder going back, I think it was 20 years ago, but he's written a couple of books. I think one of them's called Right Brain Manager, Right Brain Thinking. And what he found from his research was that with different business people, was that their ability, tracked them over several years, their ability didn't guarantee success. So you might have 10 people starting maybe with similar ability, or maybe 1 or 2 got higher ability. But if you followed up a few years later, those people with higher ability didn't always translate into success or promotions. What he found was that the people who were the leaders, who had become the leaders, were the ones who were using their brains in a slightly different way, what he called right brain thinking. Now that's since evolved into what I would call kind of whole brain thinking, where you're using your right and your left brain together. But what he found was that one of the traits they all had, the people who had succeeded, was they had cultivated the ability to imagine themselves succeeding. In essence, to think big. But they could see themselves becoming the leaders they wanted to be. They could see themselves with a business at the size they wanted it to be. It didn't guarantee everything. There were obviously challenges along the way, but that was one of the key variables in allowing themselves to succeed. And what I'm going to say to you is that, in my experience, probably 95, maybe more, 95% at least, don't necessarily think like that. Don't use their minds like that, even though this research is out there for a long, long time. You know, I'll often talk to a CEO where they'll say, I can see the vision so clearly, Shane. I can taste it, but I have to drag everybody with me, and it's exhausting. That's an indicator of somebody thinking differently, right? And everybody can learn to think a bit more like this. You still have to be very practical, get things done, make sure things are structured in a certain way for results. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions to consider, but before that, I just want to mention a tiny little plug again for something that's coming up, and it's probably the reason why I'm thinking about this content at the moment, is my program MindShift, the Entrepreneur Experiment Edition. It's a unique collaboration with Gary Fox, who is the host of the award-winning Entrepreneur Experiment interview podcast. Gary's interviewed the best of the best over the last 3 or 4 years and has his own insights around how the entrepreneurial mind works. Balance that up, we're pairing up and creating content through my program MindShift, where we're saying, okay, how do you actually take some of this information and actually turn it into real results? That's what the program is about. 8 results, taking ideas that maybe you've read or heard, maybe on some level, but then turn it into actual habits. Apply yourself. So this is a transformational program. We've got 22 slots. As the point of recording this, it's half full. So if you're anyway thinking about it, come join me, and let's make this year super, super, super for you. End of plug. So just very quickly, though, I want to say this. There was a great entrepreneur that I worked with before that if you met him and say, oh my God, wow, what an entrepreneur, amazing wealth and lifestyle. But actually, his problem was that he couldn't switch off his mind. So you can have an entrepreneurial mind, but you can't switch it off. That is a big problem. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next episode, just after this one, right? So back to today, we're talking about thinking big. It's one of the habits, acting small. So here's a question to help stretch your mind. It's a hard question though. What's impossible, but if it happened, it would be transformational for your blank? What's impossible, but if it would happen, it would be transformational for your blank. Blank being your business, your health, your core relationship, your finances, your leadership, your sales team. You decide. What's impossible? Maybe it's to do with your kids. Hard question, but if you allow yourself to kind of go with it, which is what an entrepreneurial minded person does, they will go with the question, they'll identify the answer, and then they will allow that answer to sit inside them and not be shut down by the inner voice that kind of goes, yeah, but how? Or are you joking? That's impossible. That's the difference. Allowing that to sit inside you and then going, okay, seems impossible, but let's just sit with it. And in relation to that, this week, what's the one thing I could do to take some action just to inch towards that impossibility? What's the one thing I could do? Act small. That is acting small. So that's a way to stretch your mind. Some people are going to listen to this and think, oh, I can do that. It's quite easy, maybe. And I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and go, okay, it's interesting, but that's kind of hard to do. What's impossible? It's not an easy question to answer straight off, but there is an answer. There absolutely is an answer. So think about that for yourself. So just to summarize it very quickly, one aspect of the entrepreneurial mind is to think big, but to act small. So where can you do that today? Join me for the next episode where I'm going to share another habit of the entrepreneurial mind and how to leverage it. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Ciao.